All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are really stoked to welcome you to our 8th episode of the Lunch and Learn series. And today's episode is, I'm super excited about it. For one reason I'm excited about it is that it's our first topic that was suggested to us by one of our customers. So David suggested the topic of the trail cams, and we've had over, I think, about 100 people sign up for it. So obviously it's a topic that people are interested in. So thank you so much, David, for doing this. We wanted to create these webinars to really create value within the community that we're serving, the environmental consulting community and the environmental services community. And so we just so appreciate you also contributing to that, and this is going to be a good one. So far we've covered construction monitoring, mapping and mobile GIS, wetlands, photo management, veg management, taxonomy, CRM, and SWIP. Phew. Okay, that's like most of the good stuff the platform just nails, right? You can go to our events tab on our website and see what's coming up, as well as access past episodes. So there's videos of the Zoom on the past episodes. And one day we will put these in podcast format so that you can do like I do. I go hike on my mountain and listen to a lot of content that way. So we'll get that out there as well. Also, we keep the sessions open and focused on the tools and techniques of our guest experts, so David in this case. But our audience has been asking to see more of what WildNote specifically does. So at the end of this at 11:30, if you want to stick around, David and Nancy will give you a demo of how, specifically how they're utilizing WildNote for the trail cam photo management. My name, if you don't know yet, is Kristen Hazard. I am the founder and CEO of WildNote. I'm so happy you're here. And I have with me our Director of Customer Success, Nancy Douglas.
Hello, everybody.
And our all things sales and marketing, Rini Punzi. Yeah.
Hello.
And then I'll be introducing David in a minute, but for now, Nancy's got some housekeeping to go through.
All right. Hi, everybody. Echoing Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who have been to a few of these, we really appreciate the repeat attendance as well. A couple of ways to communicate with us during the workshop. One is through the chat, and you can pick either just to the panelists or to everybody. So it's a nice way to share information if you have something to say to everybody, or if you have technical support issues, you can contact us that way. And if you have a question for our panelist, or for any of us, you can put that in the Q&A area that's also at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you hover your mouse over that area, you'll see both of those options pop up. And just so you know what to expect, basically we're going to start with a story from our guest from the field, and then we'll learn about how and why he's incorporating technology into his camera trap workflow, the problems that he's solving, and then we'll open up for questions. But you can ask questions throughout the entire thing by posting in there in the Q&A. And then hopefully if we have time, we'll talk with David also about other go-to apps in the field. And then Kristen mentioned that we'll have a demo after this for anyone who'd like to stay on. And since this is just a virtual lunch, we can't really have lunch with you. We are working with Territory Foods to provide meals to frontline healthcare workers right now. We chose them because everybody knows somebody who's putting themselves on the line for this, for providing care for others during the pandemic, which is just crazy and ongoing. And what's special for us is that as of today, we want to give a shout out to WildNote's very own frontline family, Emily Shiro and Sarah Baltusberger, who are sisters of WildNote's account executive, Jessica Grawl. Shout out to them. And also their dad, Tim Baltusberger. They all live in Madison, Wisconsin, and they work at 2 area hospitals there, Meritor and UW. We want to thank them for their compassion and fortitude in caring for folks during this time. We donate 1 meal for each workshop attendee, and for every 2 meals, Territory Foods contributes a third. Their motto is called Feeding It Forward, and your presence here is helping us do that all over the country. So far, workshop attendance has generated 490 meals for frontline workers, so that's pretty cool. And thank you for being here because you're contributing even more to that. Back to you, Kristen Hazard.
All right, great. So David Lee is a consulting biologist based in Ojai and Lompoc, California. Ojai is an incredibly beautiful area to be based out of. As a wildlife biologist, David has been camera trapping since 2015 and enjoys sharing his trail cam experience with other biologists and environmental professionals. So we first interacted with David when he came on to WildNote in 2018, actually, early adopter. Understands technology and was working for another consulting company. And since then, he started his own consulting company, David N. Lee Consulting. So if you're interested in engaging with him on that level, you can go to davidnleeconsulting.com. And then a little later in the webinar, we'll talk about a very cool workshop he's doing in, I think, next week on camera trapping. So he's got a lot of cool stuff happening with his consulting company. And David, please join us. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about camera trapping and using trail cameras to apply to wildlife biology. So I'm really excited to share what I know. And
right on. Great. Yeah. So we'd like to start each episode with a story from the field. And David, I imagine you have plenty of those. So tell us about an experience that stands out for you, and hopefully it's around camera trapping as well.
Absolutely. Well, if anyone saw the promotional photo of a mountain lion, a color photo at night of a mountain lion, and that was probably my most recent really cool story. I've been trying to get a photo of a mountain lion, and a lot of times the cameras will only take black and white photos. So I got a special camera that takes color photos at night, and I was able to, instead of mounting the camera on a tree, which is usually what you do, I figured out a way to mount the camera in the ground so that you get a ground view of the lion. And it was literally the best photo that I've taken to date of the mountain lions. So that was really, really cool.
Fantastic. So the camera was on the ground?
Yep.
Like mounted to what on the ground?
It was mounted to a piece of wood, about a 1x2 piece of wood. And then there's a mount. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's such a fabulous picture.
Instead of, you can see it's on the ground there, instead of, looking down on the line, you're sort of looking up or looking right at it. And it gives a much more dramatic effect. And then it's also color as well. So I'm really, really proud of this photo, and just really, really excited to share. I continue to learn, and that's one of the neat things. You can just keep learning and keep getting better and better at it. So.
Yeah, the perspective on that is really nice. It's pretty dramatic, especially when you looking at a mountain lion. It's like,
yeah, it's almost coming right at you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so cool. So what we like to do in our next segment is called Problem Solved. And so specifically, because it's camera trapping, looking at the problem that you were faced with when you decided to utilize WildNote to solve it. Basically. So if you could describe sort of your process and, really give to us the pain points and the problems that you're solving with WildNote.
Right, exactly. So I have a visual of the problem. It's the solution and the problem. Great. And it's this little chip right here. And this is, this SD card is what you put in the camera, and this can collect hundreds, if not thousands of photos. So when you go collect these can be from different locations. You just get basically a huge collection of photos. So my problem was, how do I take the photos off here and put them into a organized database so that I can go back and find which photo was taken at which location at which time. So WildNote has been essential for that. There really isn't any other way that I've found to organize. So you can get dozens of photos a day. And so it becomes a data management issue.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we often don't talk about with respect to having a digital tool for managing your data and photos is, you know, you may store the data, but then 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, you want to go back and find it. And having a tool like WildNote makes it so simple.
Absolutely.
Versus when you don't have a tool like that, you're like looking through folders on your computer. The file names aren't anything that you want them to be, and it can be just a massive time suck to try to find data. So.
Yeah.
Hey, David, can you explain more to me? So you go out and you collect those SD cards. Are you at that point like putting the number of the SD card into your survey, or like at what point does that get combined with the data?
So yeah, the card stays with the camera. So the card is labeled with the camera, and then we have 2 cards per camera, so you can swap it out in the field.
Right.
So that's really the only numeric connection between the card and the camera. So I collect the card out in the field, come back, plug it into my laptop, and then it just uploads a bunch of photos. Yeah.
So you then have the photos on your computer and you pull them into WildNote?
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And David, you were telling us about the Moultrie cam that you're using, right? That's your current favorite camera?
Right. Yeah. Actually, I could, if you wouldn't mind, just a second, I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. I've got.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Sorry.
I saw that while you're getting it out, I was looking at their website, and the camera can be connected to the internet, I believe, and then you can use an app to actually see the pictures remotely on the camera. Exactly.
Wow. If you've got cell reception, then there's a modem that connects. So first of all, I'll show you the camera. That's what they look like.
Okay.
They're camouflage. And it's got infrared flash. This is an invisible flash camera, so the light it puts out is invisible. Yeah. Which is good in some situations. There's the camera lens there, and this is the motion sensor right there. Yeah. And then the camera opens up, and you've got aiming screen, the data screen, and then the SD card slides right there.
Right.
Into the side, and then you got a bunch of settings.
And then that has to be connected to cellular.
So the next, then we have, this is the modem. So there's just a USB cable that connects the modem to the camera, and then this modem connects either to Verizon or AT&T.
Okay.
If you've got cell reception, and then that uploads it to a Moultrie app, so you can get photos remotely.
That's great.
Not video.
Have you done that? Have you looked remotely?
I do it a lot. It's a lot easier to get the photos that way than to go out. Yeah. If you can, yeah, and then you can delete them. You can do some editing online through the Moultrie app. But again, it's just a collection of photos, and it doesn't necessarily organize the data in any useful way.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. What would be the difference then between
it's
the Moultrie app?
It's just convenience of not having to physically retrieve the card.
Right. But data organization doesn't exist on there. It's just a whole bunch of photos. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there are some labels, and I mean, there's a little bit, but it's not anything. It's comparing apples to oranges as far as being able to. It doesn't have nearly the capacity. Yeah.
What got you into camera trapping in the first place?
Well, I've been photographing nature since I was age 12, and I love it. And you know, it's really hard to capture photos of wild animals just doing what they're doing without, you know, you can get a big long telephoto lens and be in a blind and all this, but you're still gonna be pretty limited on what you can see, especially at night. A lot of our large carnivores are active at night, and so the trail cameras just allow you a sneak, just to peek into their world without affecting them, and to be able to see what they're doing at night. And yeah.
Hey, to that respect, we have a question from one of our participants wondering how you handle the camera and modem from transmitting your scent, or is that an issue?
Oh, that's a great question. Excellent. Very interesting. So I practice what's called a clean site. So I make sure that there aren't any, I don't need any food, or there are no food scraps. Some people wear gloves. I've found that really, as long as it takes about maybe 24 hours for the scent to wear off. So I don't do anything in particular because the scent wears off. Usually my cameras are out for several weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting question. It could be debatable as to where it's worth wearing gloves. Some people recommend that, but they're just a hassle to work with out in the field in terms of doing the camera settings. But I just make sure that there's no that I'm just not leaving anything that has human scent on it. But it's definitely present.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually got some video of a lion that's coming up and smelling the camera. You just get this huge,
cool.
kind of smelling. It'll smell around, but it doesn't seem to startle them or keep most of the occurrences haven't resulted in a startling or altering their behavior. So
we have another question. Somebody wants to know the name of the camera.
This one they don't make anymore, unfortunately. This is a Moultrie M999i, and if you can get them, great. I found they're actually better than what they're currently making. So if you can find one, grab it, get a used one if it's in good condition. I found these to be the best. It's a M dash and then 39999i, but they make several models. There are other ones that I have that work as well. So feel free to contact me afterwards if you have specific questions, and I'd be happy to make some recommendations on some models that would work for your project.
Did you see the question in there as well, girls? How do you prevent your cameras from being stolen?
Great question. And
they're camouflage. Nobody can see them.
Yeah, well, camouflage helps.
They're invisible.
Sorry.
They're invisible.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Most of them will have these loops, these holes in the back, and then this is called a what are these called again? A Python. Yeah, this is called a Python cable. And so you can lock the camera and the modem up to it, usually to a tree.
Yeah.
With my ground mounting system, I can't do that. And so I need to be careful because the camera's not locked when it's mounted to a piece of wood that's buried in the ground. But I haven't had any trouble, knock on wood. Oh, there's a good story. I have had a camera knocked off and the card taken. And that was on a suspected illegal marijuana grow. But
like you didn't even care about the marijuana, but they cared about the camera.
Yeah, they didn't want to be photographed because they were going up into private property, and
Gotcha.
That's the only incidents I have. Unfortunately, the camera survived the adventure. So
did that locking cable come with the camera, or did you have to buy it as an accessory?
I know you buy these separately. They're about $20.
Okay.
Looks like a bicycle lock.
That's a good question. What's the whole get up like? How much does sort of that whole complete package cost typically, like a range?
It really varies. There's a huge range. Cameras can cost anywhere from $50 to $1,000, but if you're on the lower end, you can get a basic camera between $50 and $100, and another $50 in accessories. So you can get into it for between 100 and 200, and that's really my approach. Reconics is that's sort of the Mercedes version, and a lot of the professionals use those, and that's great for me. I'm a small business, and I just sometimes I want to put 5 or 10 cameras out, and $1,000 each. It doesn't work. So I've been able to make the more affordable cameras work for my purposes.
That leads to another question. We're having great segues. What method do you use to determine how many cameras that you need to answer your research question? And where
Very
do you place
interesting.
them?
Very interesting, and feel free to contact me. I'm actually in the process. I'm working with a statistician right now, and to figure out how many camera stations. So there's a difference between camera stations and cameras, but that's a deep dive, and it depends on the study. And I'm working with a stats person right now on a project. So feel free to contact me, and we can get into that. But
you'd probably not do a shameless plug, so I'll do one for you, David. You have a workshop coming up in November, I think, where people might be able to learn a little bit more about this. Is that right?
Let's see, is it possible for me to share my screen? Oh, yes, it is. Okay, so let's see. Yeah. So it's November 6th, 10 a.m. for about an hour. And we'll be covering, it's a basic.
Hang on, David, that screen says November 5th.
Sorry, November 5th. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thursday, November 5th. And I'll put a link to this in the chat.
Oh, good idea.
Where you can sign up. So yeah, it's a free workshop, and just we'll go into more detail on some of these topics, and it's a good general overview.
There's another question. Bruce Scarlinger is curious if you've used WildID for sorting wildlife. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't, but I'd love to learn more about it. Bruce, hi, glad you're on here, and yeah, love to hear more about that.
How about if we jump to another first for our Lunch and Learns, questions asked prior to the Lunch and Learn. So we're so happy to get these questions. From Michael Egan, are you using digital DSLR camera traps or high-end wildlife hunting Bushnell / wild game innovation spy point cameras? And what are your reasons for your choice of camera?
Yeah, I'll address the DSLR option first. If I had unlimited funds and wasn't too concerned about security, I would definitely get into DSLR. On a practical note, where I'm working on trails that have where they're public trails, the complexity of securing and also the cost of DSLR, and just so everyone's on the same page, DSLR is digital single lens reflex. So it's like a Nikon or a Canon camera can be hooked up with special flashes. It's what National Geographic does to get the really, really high quality. And it would be super fun. I'd love to get into it. But as far as doing a study or environmental monitoring, I've found that they have limited, they're not scalable really. It's hard to put 10 of them out on a project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. From Chuck Intrieri, hope I said that correctly, due to the moist, hot climate of many of the forest locations, World Wildlife Fund is working. The cameras often malfunction, so scientists will be lucky if 2/3 of the pictures are of any animals at all. Can anything be done to avoid this camera malfunctioning so more pictures are available? Yeah,
that's a very interesting question, and I would need to know what kind of cameras that they're using. What the versions that I use, and even the lower end ones, are waterproof. They have a waterproof seal. So I've never had any problem with moisture. Of course, we live in the dry climate, so
right.
But I'm not sure if they're using DSLR or what.
I think Charles is on right now. Charles, if you jump on the chat,
cool.
Or in the Q&A, and let us know what cameras you're using. We'll check it out. And then from Jeffrey Caldwell, do you have any thoughts about using camera trapping to document flower visiting insects?
That's very interesting. I haven't done that. It's a great, potentially a really good application. The question would be is how close can the lens focus in? I usually set my target at about 8 feet, 7 to 8 feet for mammals. But but I haven't tried it closer in. So it would take some experimenting to see what the focal length, what the distance is for focusing. But if the lens and the camera were able to handle it, I think it would be that could be a potentially very interesting application. The difficulty that we run into is wind. So anytime you get any little bit of wind, that creates motion and creates a false, an unwanted photograph. So you can get hundreds of those as well, and that's a challenge.
There's also 3 more questions from Jeffrey Caldwell. Do you have any thoughts about using camera trapping to document aquatic fauna?
Interesting. So aquatic fauna, I'm assuming we're talking about maybe metamorphs of frogs. That's another potential interesting application as they come out. I assume we're not talking about, well, I don't know, let me ask back, are you talking about using these underwater?
Right.
Even though they're waterproof, I don't think I would inundate them, but they could be used to monitor the shore if you're looking for aquatic, yeah.
I feel like, I think, Karen, I feel like Class Nudity, when I went to visit them, they were potentially using cameras underwater to take some pictures of aquatic, because it's wetland restoration, but I can't remember exactly. If you want to throw that in chat, if anyone out there is doing that. Next question. If not, by the way, no need to bring either. Oh, let me. Which brings one more question. What are the smallest mammals to be documented by camera trapping?
That's a great question, and I would think that you could, you could set one up at the entrance of a small rodent burrow, and that would work just fine.
Yeah, he says, he made a joke here. Notably, one might be concerned about ever elusive shrews.
Right. Yeah. They'll pick it up if you've got if you can get in there with that focal distance, and I think it may take a more advanced camera. As I say, the sweet spot on these is about 5 to 6 feet. So it would just depend on if you can actually visually see the small mammal.
We're getting a lot of great input from the chat. Karen Adams says we use GoPro for aquatic monitoring.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah, and then Richard Leslie, sorry if I messed up your name, CDFW uses a camera system during trawling to document fish, smelt cam.
And then there's ant cam.
Ant cam. From Bruce Garling.
Yeah, you capture ant movement. Rini, did you catch those other questions up earlier in the chat? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question. Well, on the Q&A piece, Jim Audley is asking how you pick your locations for the cameras.
Very interesting question. Very site dependent. The big picture is you need to kind of get into the head of whatever critter it is that the animal that you're looking for, and try to imagine if you're going looking for a mountain lion, you try to put it along a hunting route, possibly a route to water. Sometimes they use topography. A lot of times I'll take a look and see what scat is already present in the area, and then set up at a trail junction. It's a great question, and it's always at the top of my mind when I go out to set up a site.
Kristen, I have a question for you. Did you start the poll? I'm not seeing any results.
Yeah, yep.
Are you seeing the results? So if so, will you go through that?
I'll do the results after you ask the rest of the questions.
Yeah, I have to scroll up.
Maurizio Cerna asks, for species that aren't easy to differentiate between individuals, how do you calculate relative abundance? In other words, do you have a specific time range to identify an individual as a new individual?
Very interesting. Yeah. It's one thing we would I'd love to be able to do more of, is identify individuals. There have been some studies of using the inside leg pattern of bobcats, have a black and white stripe, and there have been some studies that have been able to identify individual bobcats by those the leg stripes. as far as setting up a study and designing to try to figure out spatially. I'm actually right in the process of that now, and am doing a study design and working with a statistician and looking at some previous studies. So I'd be happy to share some of the previous studies that have looked at that. It's a very interesting question, and it is a somewhat of a limitation without using identification markings of individuals.
David, are you on any of the social media, Twitter, Instagram,
Yep.
any of that?
Yep, Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, David and Lynn Consulting. Yeah.
Would you mind putting your handles in the chat? And that way people, you're doing a lot of cool work, and I know you're planning on doing some more. And I think if people want to keep up with what you're doing, maybe they could follow you on one of those.
Absolutely.
Platforms. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, I was
All
just
right.
looking.
Yeah, so Karen asked a question in the Q&A, and Bruce Garlinger said, we get other insects, sometimes IDBs, often ID butterflies, none of which are the target species.
Bruce, can you post what camera you're using for that, for the when you capture the ant movement?
And then Nick was saying, Nick Rigoli, who works at WildNote now, but is also a wildlife biologist, says that he's seen success using camera traps for giant kangaroo rats.
Wow.
Which is that's a local protected species, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yes, Karen, so WildNote does allow you to upload both video and photos in WildNote. So her question was, I'm assuming the WildNote app can work the same way for GoPro cameras for still images. We also do a lot of videos and video clips with both our wildlife cams and our GoPros. Would it work with video? And the answer is yes. And then, oh, here's a good one to end on, actually. What has been your favorite type of animal to record?
You know, it's so fun. It's kind of like sort of like Christmas when you go get that chip and you go get the card and you check it. And probably one of the neatest ones that I've got was a great blue heron that was fishing on the edge of a stream. It was really cool to see it moving and actually fishing. So.
Yeah, I got to spend some time at a local nature preserve called Sedgwick last couple years, and they set their cameras up at watering holes, and oh my gosh, the stuff they were getting was incredible. Yeah. Bears, mountain lions, coyotes, turkeys, hawks, just so much great stuff. It's just so fun to watch.
It's really fun. It's just.
And then Jim Audley asks, have you been able to use cameras to do deer counts or activity? Is it possible to differentiate individual deer?
Yeah, interesting question. I haven't specifically focused on deer. I think you could do some population estimates as far as identifying individuals. That might be possible in the fall in the rut if by antler patterns, but that would be a good thing to look in the literature. I'm sure there's some good, someone's probably done that, and Google Scholar's been a great reference there for looking up. There's a really pretty well established, there are a lot of studies that are available on camera trapping. So yeah.
One more question that I'm even more coming through. So we'll stay a little later. I'm super interested in this, Daphne Day. Do you use AI for image processing, or is it all done by eyeball, by hand?
Yeah, I've heard of there are some AI programs that are out there. I haven't personally experimented with them. What I would need to see how good they can be, because sometimes all you'll get is a foot, or you'll just get a part of a leg in the corner, and I'm not sure if AI could pick that up. So
I wonder if any of our guests out there are using AI for image processing, and if you are, if you could post in the chat anything you've learned about that. Seems like definitely the future, right? So Felix Martinez Nunez, any suggestions on what type of camera should I use for small, nocturnal, fast-flying mammals, bats? I've checked some FLIR ones, but they are really expensive.
Right. Yeah. Probably feel free to contact me afterwards, and we can kind of work through it. I have some. I've got some suggestions, and I could look into that. So be happy to work with you offline on that one.
All right. Let me. Speaking of that, this is. I'm sharing my screen, right, Beanie? Can you see?
Yes, you are.
Great. So you can see David's email address, david@dnlenv.com, David and Lee Environmental Consulting. So you can contact him that way. And thank you, David, so much. We didn't really get to any of the other segments, but this was so interesting with the camera trapping.
Great questions.
Yeah, this is great. Definitely the most interactive that we've had. So that's so cool. And next workshop is the one we promised last time, but we had a little bit of a scheduling, some FBI Quantico situation here. So we had to reschedule.
FBI took precedence.
Yep, we had to reschedule Build Better Bids by Leveraging Technology with Rob Pelletier of Heritage Environmental Services. And David joined us a couple weeks early for the camera trapping, so thanks for that. And the poll results, so we were just interested in how many, what percentage of the folks on the webinar actually are using trail cams, and it's 64% are using trail cams.
Cool.
And then I asked if work or hobby, and 70% of those folks are using it for work and 61% for hobby. So some people are using both work and hobby. So that's interesting. I would love to have a little trail cam hobby.
You'd have to get rid of your dog. You'd scare everything away, Kristen.
Well, he wouldn't be there.
I would just be staring at pictures of my dog all the time. Taking my
Exactly.
All right. So now I think what we'll do is jump on to the demo. And anyone who wants to see the demo from Nancy and David, go ahead and stay. And we're getting lots of thank yous in the chat, which is awesome. Yeah, so go ahead, Nancy, take it away. I'll stop sharing.
All right, let me get my share on here. There's one more thing in the, oh yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, okay. So for those of you who are new to WildNote, super quick overview. WildNote is a environmental compliance platform, one-stop shop for all of your data collection and reporting needs for any kind of environmental compliance work that you do. It's comprised of a cloud-based web application and then a corresponding app that you download from the App Store that does not work independently. It works in conjunction with the web app. And that app that you download from the App Store for both iOS and Android devices works offline. So, you know, people like David are out in the middle of nowhere without connectivity. I'm sure many of you on the call are in the same position, or managing people that are in that position. And you can go off and collect all your data offline. And then when you get back to good connection, you sync that data to the cloud, and then you would come back to the web platform to manage your data and to export it. So David has kindly allowed us to share his projects screen so you can kind of see how the structure of WildNote works. So it starts and ends with a project because we recognize the work you folks do is often project-based. And a project is comprised, of course, of the people working on the project, what their roles are, the survey forms that you build and or grab from our library to incorporate into your workflow, collect your data, and then any project documents that you might need available to you offline, you can load those up and have those available to you. So maps, previously collected data, permits for the places that you're going to, those are all available to you if you load those up in the web app and sync your phone or your tablet. And And then after you do all that, you come back in and do your post-processing. So you do your data review, your data editing, and then we have a very large variety of exports. So for David, and chime in here, David, anytime, he's done a lot of biological resource work. Would you say that's the preponderance of the kind of professional
Yes,
work that you do? Okay,
absolutely. Yeah.
so he does a lot of biological resource work for emerging cannabis farms, and really anything. I think you're kind of the gun for hire for that, I would say, if
Yeah, I do.
that's
Yeah, and development projects as well.
okay. Yeah, like
Utility.
solar development, utility development, that kind of thing. Yeah, cool. So when you started getting into the camera trapping, you decided to use WildNote for that. So I'll just sort of take you on a little tour. Rini, can you monitor chat for me and just let me know if there's anything in there that
Sure.
I need to
On it.
incorporate into that? Thank you so much. So basically, this card represents a project 1A Cam Trapping 2020. And this go-to menu divides this project card into everything for setup and then everything for export. So I'm just going to jump over to the surveys that David is using for this particular project. He's got two. He's got one, David, that actually captures the data, and that's where you incorporate your photos. So why don't you talk about your workflow for that, actually, David? What's the workflow?
So the workflow is I either retrieve in some way, either through the Moultrie app or through the actual physical card. I retrieve the photos, put them on download them or upload them to my laptop. And then from there, I upload them to WildNote.
And then you have a separate form that you use to actually keep track of the camera itself. Is that right? Is that what we're looking at right now?
So that's right. So we'll back up. Yeah. So the first thing I do is set up a camera. So I go out and exactly that's a great photo there. We're seeing a picture of a camera that's set up. And then when I'm on my mobile device, I open up WildNote, and then I use the site data form to enter a new site, and that includes location information, a lot of detail, which way the camera is facing, and what type of camera it is, and all that. So that's the first piece is to complete that site data form. Yeah. Okay.
And you're dynamically getting your sites, right? So for example, we have this thing that's called dynamic location. So you'll just go find the spot that you're going to be, and then you can name that location, and WildNote will grab the lat long of that location for you when you're out there. Okay.
Which is great, yeah, because a lot of times, because I won't know in advance, I have to get out there in the field and see where I'm going to set it up. So it's just great. I can punch in, just type in the data, and then it automatically geolocates, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. And so then you've done that, and then you retrieve your photos, and then you incorporate those photos into a data sheet that's relevant to that particular camera. In that particular
to the site.
To the site.
Camera
sorry,
site.
to the camera site, right? Yes. Okay.
Exactly.
So this is an example of that data that you loaded in. Do you put all the photos in, or do you just grab the best ones?
It's just the best ones. Yeah. It depends on the particular project. If we're just doing monitoring, we'll just take one of the representative photos. For the study that I'm working on, we'll probably include more photos, because the photo itself will be data that we'll use for statistical, or the data from the photo then will run through a statistical modeling. So
got it.
But generally for monitoring, I'll just pick one per day, or one. It's a little complicated. So the cameras can take what we call a 3 burst. So when there's one event, the camera I have them set up where they go boom, 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 and they'll take 3 photos just to make sure. So in this case, this was a quick moving lion. I'll keep all 3 of those because there was some fast movement. You can see it's kind of jumping back. It saw something. So in this case, I would keep all 3 of those, even though it was a 3 burst. those 3 photos were taken within milliseconds of each other.
So each data sheet actually will represent one instance of a sighting then.
Exactly. What we
Got
call
it.
is one event, which may
One event.
include 1 or more photos. Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And then if you wanted to export this, you could go into our export window, and there's all kinds of different ways you could get data out of this. You could do a export where you run through to a PDF that incorporates the photos into that, and it could be a compilation where you go across time for a particular site, so you could get all the photos of a particular site all together in one export, and that's very easy to do. I'll run this through just so people can see how that works. You pick your data sheet, and your starting and your ending date, and then here's where you would pick your camera trap if you wanted to pick a particular site. You could grab it from this drop-down list here, and there's other parameters you can set, and then just click Preview Report, and you end up with a nicely formatted report that incorporates all the data and the photos together. And so that's one way. You could also export to a KML file or to a geodatabase file if you're using any kind of Esri tools. And in addition to that, David, one of the things that you've talked about is this idea of photo management and how much easier it is to manage photos within the context of WildNote. And I just wanted to share that these are photos from across all of your projects here collectively. And all of these data sheets link right back to the data set themselves. So a real easy way for you to come in and spy something and then go back to the actual data associated with that particular photo.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like we said before, David also uses this for just general biological resources assessments, and then specific information about that. Rini, any questions in chat that I can answer?
Just several thank yous. And we thank you right back for attending.
Absolutely. Feel free to share anything else, David, that you'd like, but we just like to keep this pretty brief. If anybody wants to do a more full-blown demo, or you're interested in a trial, you can reach out to Rini directly or me, and we'd be happy to set that up for you.
Definitely. Well, that's a good ending point then, everyone. Thank you again, David, for sharing your expertise. I think people really enjoyed learning about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And
it makes me want to go out and do it. I don't know what I'm going to capture. I love frogs. I'm going to capture some frogs by the hot tub or something.
Accomplished. That's great.
All right.
Yeah,
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Really
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.